What's going on, guys? This is Geo Level Up Design. Thanks for tuning in. Basically going to be going over something really important with any game, right? Big concept, and that is the GDD. So the GDD is a game design document. Basically imagine it like the Bible, right? Bible game. Super important. Basically sets like the whole foundation for a game. You know what to expect in it. You know, the mechanics, the cutscenes, the enemies, the players, interactions, items, and so on and so forth. So we're going to dive into kind of like an example, or like a bulk example of what that will look like. So let's check that out and see how it goes. All right, so here we are with the GDD example that we have. This is a exaggerated, very, well, actually not even exaggerated. This is a very in-depth example of what a GDD could have, right? So I'm not going to go into the whole motion of everything here of like all this stuff, but you could see just with like the table of contents and like the highlights of what's within this GDD that would be, let's say, completed in a real sense. We have 17 pages of stuff, and that's not including like actual fill-in content. You know, everything here, like you'll see, just one that I did a little while back. It's like you'll see here, it will have game flow summary, right? You know, how does it move through the game? How does it work? You know, the transitions and whatnot. It just has one sentence. This game flow summary would have probably paragraphs of things, or maybe like a storyboard in a sense. But this is just kind of showing you a template, and then obviously whatever is needed or where you feel it would be best for you. You know, you can just basically cut this out and replace it in a sense, and put in whatever is applicable for your game. But you could see, just as an example, right? You have you know, the features, the genre of games. It's kind of like basic, just general info of the game. You'll be able to have you know, the flow of it, the mechanics, how they work, how they interact in the game, how they interact with the player, how they interact with enemies, and you know, combat, the economy system if you have it, screen flowcharts. These flowcharts are just basically like how things transition from like one state to the next. So obviously you have a character, right, who's just idle, just right, and then from idling they're going to go into running, so they're going to be running. And from running, they go into combat, or they go into dying, right? There's a lot of flows with that, and you've probably seen in a lot of games how many things could happen in the span of like a handful of seconds. That all kind of explains how that works, right? So a big part of what a GDD is again like a huge file representing what the game entails, you know, what's in it, what to expect. You know, one for, you know, the people who are actively working on the project. You know, it'd be good for when there's a GDD set up, right? And let's say the designers, right? The combat designer, for example, needs to go on there and needs to start working, right? They need to turn in their stuff. They're gonna go and look and see, all right, so how does the combat work? The first enemy just does one punch. That's it, one solid punch, nothing else. Seems kind of useless, but whatever. So he does that one punch. So they're gonna have here in the details of that enemy, let's say enemy number 1, just generic name. When player enters the vicinity, enemy number 1 throws a straightforward punch to hit them, hopefully, right? So now the designer will go into their engine, into their software, and start coding that out. You know, same thing with environment artists. You know, when they start working on pieces, they're gonna be like, all right, what am I making? I don't know, right? So they'll look at that and they'll see, okay, I see we're going to be in a semi-open world. We're going to go ahead and we're going to need mountains, right? There's going to be mountains listed, foliage, you know, any types of trees, bushes, sticks, whatever, and other stuff like that. So one, it's good for people currently on the projects. They know what they need to do and one thing to work on once this is filled out with what they need. And two, it's good for new hires, right? So you're coming in, you know, bright-eyed and ready to work, but where do you start, right? So typically you'll have your lead or your director, let's say, to guide everybody in the right direction, you know, check in, see how the progress is, and then I'll tell you, all right, I want you to go ahead and look into the economy, like the economy system and how it works. At that point, typically you'll have either a level designer, or there could be a certain team dedicated to documentation that'll go here. You go to the economy section, we're gonna go click on here and we'll see everything. Boom. What is the economy of the game? How does it work? Now you know, okay, economy, we need to have, whatever, let's use rupees, sure. Need to have rupees. All right, how many rupees variants are there, right? You're going to have your green one, you're going to have your blue one, your purple one, and each one has a different value. And then you're going to start basically working on it. which is pretty cool, right? You know, you usually don't see this stuff like as a player. You won't really expect. You think people just kind of go on a whim. It's like, all right, if I'm making an RPG, I need an inventory system, and they start creating it. It's possible that does happen, probably more in indie companies, but AAA studios, they have everything lined out and ready to go, so that when everybody's starting to work, whether a new person or an existing one, they have all the info they need. And this gets edited very often, right? Especially as later things progress, you have a lot more things implemented. You're going to be going ahead and basically updating those. You know, one thing that maybe affects the player's, let's say, health over a certain amount of time, with that implemented, may now actually affect their durability of their armor. So we got to make that adjustment, right? But there's a lot that you could put on here, and there's also a little bit you could put on here. Might be a little daunting on how to start, realistically, but how I normally do it is I just start out with what I call a gratis. So gratis is Gratis, and it's an acronym, obviously. So G is for goals, R is for rules, A is for actions, T is for transitions, I is for items, and S is for setup. And those are all pretty much self-explanatory. So, but example, right? Goals. What's the player doing? Whether it's within a level or the overarching goal in the actual in the game, in the world, what are they doing? You know, player has to escape prison. Okay, boom, that's a goal. And along that, you might have a goal that says player collects keys. Cool, that's another one. Player collects diapers. I don't know, whatever. I mean, yeah, sure, you could put that on there, right? Then you have your rules, which is just like how things work and how things interact with each other. Actions are basically what are the actions in the game. So a couple examples, and they're usually all verbs. So you walk, you run, you attack, you die, you collect, you climb, etc. The list goes on, and you basically, all those verbs, you give it a breakdown of what does that actually mean. Some are obvious, some are not. You know, it could depend. You have T for transitions, and transitions more focuses on the stages from one flow to the next. So let's say you have idle, which is a standard phrase in the industry, just like the player standing still, just right. So you have that state. Now they're gonna move. They go from idle to walking, running, crouching, swimming, whatever. And at that point, they're now doing that, and maybe they get attacked. So they're gonna go into attacking or combat or running. Right? Could be fleeing. It could be running away from the scene, like cowards. But still, nonetheless, that's another one. Items, self-explanatory. It's items. That could be health pack. Again, explaining what these do. That could be a stamina potion. Could be inventory, like an item, like gear, like helmets, chest piece, gloves. Could be the legendary sword of Agamemnon. Whatever. It's something on there that's going to have a value in it, and something that the person could collect or interact with or use in the game, basically. The last one is setup. Setup is not, I don't really personally use that setup as it's more for like a board game term personally for me, like how do the players set up to start playing. But usually setup, you can have it as like how's the intro, right? Like what's the flow of that? You know, player wakes up, player gets a gun, player goes on a killing spree. It's GTA. That's that's GTA Online. Even actually GTA the story as well. But just to name a couple things. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like the gist of GDD is. You know, obviously, if any questions, feel free to highlight that in the comments. If you did like the video, like, subscribe to the channel. Check me out on Twitch. I do stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 to 3. I'm going to be adding in some new times as well in the near future. But check it out. Tune in the stream. You guys could, you know, we could talk about things, learn about the principles and theories of doing the level design. But if not, you know, again, I appreciate your time. Hopefully this was informational for you. And I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.